Thank you very much. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to really thank Peter because, NSF, we provide funding, but it's actually a principal investigator and the community that do the work, right? So Peter and I have gone through the process of, oh, Peter, we got the budget now. You got to submit the proposal 2 weeks from now. And then I go back and forth, send him email on Saturdays and he respond and we're here because of Peter. So let's actually thank you. So what I'm going to do, Peter has already described the focus of the workshop, right? So for me, as NSF program director, I'm not going to discuss the details of the workshop. So I'm going to just say, after this workshop, if you have some ideas about doing research in this area, you don't have to wait for a special solicitation. We have programs at NSF that are already available. So in my presentation, I'm going to give you some, like guidance about those programs. And then we have another presentation tomorrow from another NSF program director that will continue the theme. So next slide, please. Oh, I can do the, okay, this way. Okay, great. Okay. All right, so first, I'm going to give you an overview of NSF and how it's organized for the purpose of saying that if you want to do something, where do you go? And then at NSF, we actually fund infectious disease research, emergence, transmission, and mitigation. So we fund them through the core programs, and we fund them through cross-cutting program and solicitation. So first, an overview of NSF. So NSF was essentially founded by Congress to invest in basic research and people to create knowledge to transform the future. When we fund research, we always link it with education. We fund a graduate student and a PI, professor, that do research. So the research involves really training, and that's very critical, especially for pandemic, because you want to train the next generation. So how is NSF organized? So NSF somewhat is organized like university. In a way, you have the office of the director, which is the office of the president, and then you have the different supporting office, office of diversity, civil rights, and then you have the core colleges, like, biological, at NSF we call them directorate, the bio directorate, the science directorate, education, engineering. I'm from the engineering directorate. So these are the essentially directorate where everything is happening. So the directorates are organized around divisions, and the divisions are organized around core programs. At NSF, typically 70% of the funding goes to core programs in specific divisions. So that's where you're going to have to look for if you have an idea. At NSF, we also look at opportunities to seed new research areas like pandemic, where we put some funding in those areas. So I'm going to elaborate more on that. So how do we actually support research at NSF? We support individual teams of investigators through proposal-based research awards. So this is the essence of the core program, 70% roughly. In addition to that, we actually support larger efforts like research center, engineering research centers, science and technology centers. We have some director of STCs here. We also support things called research coordination network. Like for wastewater surveillance, my program has funded a research coordination network. In addition to that, NSF really funds international collaboration. You'll have to talk to the core program and Office of International Science and Engineering to see what's possible. And we work with many federal agencies to advance the national agenda for specific topics in this area. So, can you advance it? I think I'm blocked. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to spend a little time here to really At NSF, in addition to the standard panel peer review process, we can fund Eagle and then Rapid. So I'm going to focus on Rapid. Rapid is really important in the sense that during the pandemic, these funding mechanisms, that's unique to NSF. So the way that Rapid works, if there's a situation that meets the Rapid criteria, you can contact an NSF program director. And if you convince them that, this is really important and it's appropriate for the Rapid funding mechanism, you can submit a proposal and it's internally reviewed by the program director and the division director, and then they make a decision and you can get funding in 2 weeks. So during the essentially pandemic, the Rapid funding mechanism was critical for NSF to really show an impact. In the next slide, I'm going to show you that impact. So prior to the pandemic, environmental engineering has funded many projects related to fundamental research on DNA sequencing of wastewater, sludge. Some of them were like career proposal orders. So maybe 10 years before the pandemic. So once the pandemic hit and wastewater surveillance was starting to be, I think some of the early work was like maybe a group in Holland showed that the promise. So essentially around that time, NSF was thinking about how do we really have an impact here? And so throughout the foundation, we essentially funded, inquired about ideas and funded over 1,000 awards, with many awards on wastewater surveillance that came through the environmental engineering program. That was like, most of those awards were out by April. So it really had a major impact in demonstrating the viability of wastewater surveillance as a tracking tool to monitor the spread of COVID-19. So it was so successful that NIH followed through, CDC, and they established a national wastewater surveillance. Here, I'm just quoting you, putting here a quote from this report of the Science and Technology Evaluation Group. I'm part of that working group that really recognized the impact of this work. And many of you here have had that. So thank you for your work in establishing wastewater surveillance. So this really show the impact of NSF. Now, having said that, right now, if you have an idea about disease transmission, where do you go at NSF? I said there are many programs. So the first thing I suggest for you to go is to essentially go to this website where we have a meta program description. What is a meta program at NSF? It's not really a separate program. It's just putting together, saying to you, this topic, infectious disease, multidisciplinary at NSF is funded through many directorates. So when you come here, you're going to see what's available. So what is available are essentially core programs. So if you go to bio, the division of biological infrastructure, the division of environmental biology, molecular, cellular biology, all of those divisions, they fund research related to this topic. But you have to now go talk to the program director, figuring out, and I'll tell you a little bit more of that. Same thing with division of, size, same thing with engineering. Like most of you come to environmental engineering, you know what to expect from us. So all of these different programs support primarily individual and small team of researchers, collaborative proposal in this area. So next slide. So how do you actually get to this point? This is where you need to do your homework. The first thing is like, you need to think about what exactly I want to do. Then if it's like fundamental, I don't know, biology of the virus related thing, maybe you might want to go to molecular cellular bioscience. Maybe it's more like an organismic level. You might go to division of integrated organism or environmental biology. The point is like you really need to figure out where you want to send. And the next thing, before you contact the program director, write an email and a one-pager. Put a tentative title. So And then you send it to the program director. Don't send like 4 ideas together. If you want 4 ideas feedback, send them separately. Then what you're going to get is like whether your idea is great or not. That's not what, that's the panel that does that. So what you're going to get is this idea fits within this program, and we give you budget guideline and ask you to submit the proposal. And typically what we want to see is a brief overview and rationale, overall goal, number. So most of you that interact with me, you know that's what I ask you. So it's the same format. Some program director might ask you different things. Next slide. So in addition to the core program, we have this cross-cutting foundation-wide program, and they like, so tomorrow, the NSF program director, my colleague Rebecca Farrell, will actually discuss those in detail. So then, you know, in addition, if you want more funding across, you know, like disciplinary, multidisciplinary topic, maybe some of these programs might be of interest to you. Next slide. So now, in addition to research, we fund different workshops. This is the only slide where I'm going to talk about the workshop. This workshop was designed to be workshop 5 for predictive intelligence for pandemic prevention. It took a while for us to get it actually done. So Emmanuel was involved in this process. I think you guys helped with workshop 2 and 3, right? So then those reports are available. So then that's why having Energetic is really important. They're going to help really take notes and put everything together in the context of this overall theme of predictive intelligence for pandemic prevention. And workshop 5 is really designed for that. And I'm actually glad that we're doing it now, because then we can, since we did the first home workshop, have had many projects funded to phase 1 and things. So this is actually a good point to have that. So next. So anyway, key take home message. You don't have to wait for a special solicitation if you actually have some ideas in this field that you need to want to investigate. So look at the core programs, and the slides will be available. Look at the meta programs, and then start thinking about the core program that can get you started. Core programs are limited, you know, funding, but they can get you started. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to do this brief presentation about multidisciplinary emerging infectious disease research areas at NSF. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. I'm Rebecca Farrell. I am a program director for the biological anthropology program. Do I have to do it here? Got it. Got it. There we go. And so that's my day job as program director for biological anthropology. But as with most program directors at NSF, we also get involved with a lot of other programs. And so I've been involved with several of the emerging infectious disease cross-cutting programs. And that's, I think, why my colleague Mamadou Diallo wanted me to come and talk today. So I want to start with something more general, a general note about NSF. And I think Mamadou talked about this a little bit yesterday. NSF has 8 now research directorates. The newest one is Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. And in addition has an Office of Integrative Activities and an Office of International Science and Engineering. And so there's a lot of different research opportunities. Oh, I forgot. Yeah. That's going to be a challenge for me to do this. There's 8 research directorates and 2 other offices dividing the research into major topical areas of science and engineering. But as we all know, not every research project or question fits neatly into the NSF structure. We do that mostly just for our own organizational purposes. And so there's many cross-directed activities on many different topics at NSF. And today I'm going to talk about, in particular, the ones related to emerging infectious disease. Great. So what does cross-cutting look like for emerging infectious disease research at NSF? So we were reminded during the COVID pandemic that EID, emerging infectious disease, is definitely an area that can't be addressed by only individual programs or only siloed research areas, that it absolutely has to be cross-cutting. And I'm sure that I'm preaching to the choir here, given, but I don't think it ever hurts to repeat that. And as the slide says, there are therefore several different solicitations that are aimed at much bigger projects than would be normally funded by core programs. In this particular case, it means a deep convergent integration between the biological sciences, data science, engineering, and social and behavioral science. Since I'm from SBE, Social, Behavioral, and Economic Sciences, I'm also going to do a shout out on most of my slides for the fact that SBE researchers and SBE theory and questions have to be part of this as well, that it's really a valuable part. It shouldn't be an afterthought. It's something that should be considered from the beginning, along with the other parts of the questions, the biological parts of the questions, the data management and data science questions, the engineering questions. So, and to some extent, the engineering questions are human behavior and human systems questions. So again, preaching to the choir, but I think I'm excited that a lot of these cross-cutting efforts have included SBE to the extent that they have. All right, so now I'm going to move on to talking about the three programs that I wanted to mention today. The first is a long-standing program, Ecology and Evolution of Infectious Disease, or EEID. And you can see here, I've listed the directorates at NSF who currently participate. That includes, obviously, biological sciences, but also math and physical sciences, the oceanography component of the geosciences, and the social, behavioral, and economic sciences. So we have program directors from all of those directorates who are involved in the program, who help to revise the solicitation, who attend the panels, who handle proposals. And I think it's a really great group. In addition to the NSF folks, we also have partners from NIH, from USDA, from the UK research institutes, the US Israel Binational Natural Science Foundation, and the Natural Science Foundation of China. And you can see some of the stats here. Because this is a longstanding program, it has reached a large number of students, and there have been a large number of publications and other outcomes. Now, what's really interesting about these are large-scale projects. Generally, they're around $3 million per award for a 5-year award. And they don't just look at human infectious disease. They can also be looking at animal infectious disease or even at plant infectious disease. And their expectation is that you have both a modeling and an empirical data component. Another expectation is that whatever system you've decided to research should result in some sort of generalizable knowledge that goes beyond that one system. Otherwise, it's really just looking at a single system and not advancing knowledge in a more generalizable way. The awards that come out of this program are fantastic, and they focus on epidemic and endemic diseases. They focus on airborne, waterborne, vector-borne disease transmission. There's definitely an incorporation of both human behavior and geography. So that's bringing in the SBE component. And a lot of these projects address major economic implications for agricultural industries, livestock, and wildlife management. So there are definitely clear, broader impacts for these large projects, in addition to the advancement of knowledge about disease transmission in particular. Okay, the second one I want to talk about is a fairly new program. I think it might just be in its second year, a second review cycle, and that's the Incorporating Human Behavior in Epidemiological Models program. You can see that it includes, again, not surprising, biological sciences, math and physical sciences, and SBE, social, behavioral, and economic sciences. This is like a mini EEID that focuses in on the modeling aspect. and focuses in particular on the human behavioral component. So for example, there are projects that have been recently awarded looking at how to integrate behavior change interventions into epidemiological models. And a lot of this program really did come out of what we realized we needed as we went through and continue perhaps to go through the COVID pandemic. And other projects have looked at things like the effects of population mobility or behavioral feedback or network behaviors on infectious disease dynamics. The projects are up to $1 million each. I think some of them, at least in the database right now, appear to be a little bit smaller than that, and about 10 to 15 awards per year. So it's something to check out if you're on the modeling side of the infectious disease research community. Okay, and then the last two slides I have are talking a little bit about PIP, Predictive Intelligence for Pandemic Prevention. And some of you may be familiar with that if you applied to the PIP Phase 1, which was the development grants portion. But PIP really did come out of the COVID pandemic and is intended not just to address COVID, but to go beyond COVID to think about future pandemics and how can we do better next time? What can we be doing in terms of pre-emergence, identifying when there's a risk? How does biosensing play a role in that? What are the relationships about host pathogen that we don't really fully understand and that we need to understand better? And again, what are the human systems involved? Not only in terms of human behavior and how that feeds back into disease transmission, but also policy, communication, misinformation, all of these different issues that we've seen during the current pandemic. So about 30 awards were made. These were to prepare for larger center activities in the future. Each PIP grant had to have a grand challenge idea, which I think was vexing for the research community because they said, what do you mean grand challenge? And we said, well, what do you mean grand challenge? So we really expected people to come up with a particular focus for their planning activities that largely fell into those bulleted areas that you see on the slide. And the other really exciting part was that we were requiring that each of these projects include researchers from all 4 directorate areas. So from the beginning, there needed to be PIs, co-PIs, or collaborators who are from all of these 4 areas. All right. So now we are in the process of scaling up. PIP has scaled up to the center grant level, and this is now open. The proposals are already in. This is open to people who had a PIP-1 proposal, but it was also open to anybody that wanted to apply for the PIP-2, but you had to put in a letter of intent. So that ship has sailed, and now we have proposals that we're preparing to set up panels for. But the idea here is that, the PIP-1 was really a planning, 18-month planning exercise. And maybe there's some other research groups out there who really didn't need PIP-1 and were really ready to move straight to PIP-2. So we have a number of proposals. I can't tell you what the number is, but it was a robust response to this activity. And we want people to think about what a center scale activity is really going to look like, because it's not just advancing foundational pandemic research. It's also what kinds of applications will come out of these centers, what kinds of student training, what kinds of public outreach will come out of these centers. And each of these proposals had to pick one of the 4 themes that you see, which are very similar to the themes that you saw for PIP-1. Again, this is a little bit vexing. People said, well, what if it's both 2 and 4? What if it's all of them? And we just asked that they picked the one that really was going to be the strongest driver or integrator of all of the ideas that they would be pursuing. So we don't have information on what's going to happen with PIP2 yet. There's going to be a fairly small number of awards made out of this program because they are very large grants. But we're excited about the fact that we've been able to move from PIP1 to PIP2. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing what comes out of it. So those are all of my slides, and happy to take any questions whenever appropriate. Thank you.
Also wanted to take a moment too to see if we had any questions for Rebecca as well, or for NSF. Actually, I had a question to kick it off. So we've heard a bit about sort of the need for this interface between environmental science, data science, and policy. You talked earlier about the PIP2 program and sort of going beyond the fundamentals of pandemic research. And I'm wondering if that includes the potential for collaboration with health policy experts or efforts for addressing policy. I'm wondering, does NSF draw a line somewhere, or is that sort of potentially in scope?
Yeah, great question. So we absolutely are looking for collaboration with external stakeholders of all types in these big centers. But really all NSF projects we're looking for some kind of extension beyond the research questions. That's what our broader impacts merit review criterion is all about. So in the case of PIP2, it's just kind of on a larger scale. And yeah, we don't want to just know the answers. We want to know what people are going to be doing with the answers. Now, whether that ends up being always part of the center's activities or something that extends beyond the center is going to be up to the research group to decide. But yes, thank you for the question.